Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. United States President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer met in Berlin on Friday. They discussed the possibility of ending Russia's war against Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East. The meeting was important, but it lacked an important participant, Poland. Asked about this situation, the Polish foreign minister replied, "Such meetings happen all the time. G7, G20, we are not present at all the forums." And who decided that we were not to be there? The German Chancellor? Radosław Sikorski answered, probably yes. Mostly the hosts decide who they wish to invite.
Was it Olaf Scholz's decision that our country's representative was not there? Yes, usually the hosts decide who they want to invite. The words of the head of Polish diplomacy confirmed the former Estonian president's thesis that the German chancellor was to personally block Poland's participation in the Berlin talks. But Radosław Sikorski is not making our country's absence a big deal. Such meetings happen all the time. G7, G20, we're not present at all of the forums. But no decisions were made there, so I wouldn't put so much emphasis on it. Donald Tusk promised that nobody would outwit him in the European Union. However, it seems that Germany, which has the most gain from Ukraine's post-war reconstruction, has decided to rip off Tusk, who in the past emphasized the importance of being at the conference table. At this political dinner, you are either at the table or on the menu. The rule of the current governing coalition also coincides with a noticeable change in the attitude of the United States towards Poland. Earlier, key U.S. officials met with Polish authorities frequently. Now, when White House representatives go to Ukraine, to which they travel through Polish territory, no such meetings occur. The visits of the Polish foreign minister in Washington, D.C. are being postponed, which means that the Americans do not treat these issues as a priority. The same applies to contacts at the level of the head of the Pentagon and the head of the Polish Ministry of Defense. Meetings are quite rare. Former Minister Błaszczak met with Lloyd Austin much more often than Prime Minister Kosiniak-Kamysz. It is bad that these relations with our main ally are less extensive. Poland should be participating in the talks, especially since it was Poland that took it upon itself to help Ukraine at the beginning of the war. Poland has taken in millions of Ukrainian refugees, and it is through Polish territory that all the military aid of the democratic world is being delivered to Ukraine. If it hadn't been for Poland's help at the very beginning, we don't know how events would have turned out and whether Kyiv would have been seized or not. We should be aware that the situation is different now, and we should take advantage of it, so that Poland's global position is appropriate to what we have worked for, and that is clearly not the case now. Because it was Poland and Prime Minister Morawiecki who went so far as to visit Berlin to put pressure on Germany not to be indifferent to the war against Ukraine. I came here to the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, to shake the conscience of Germany so that it finally decides to adopt truly devastating sanctions. That is why Scholz has no moral right to leave out Poland in talks about peace and Ukraine, unless there are other forces at play besides the desire to do business. This could be a prelude to a diplomatic reset on a much larger scale, because President Biden was there. It also sends a message to the U.S. electorate that perhaps some sort of peace plan is around the corner, and this could be what helps Kamala Harris win the election. Just one question: why without Poland? Because as history has shown once before, when peace in Ukraine is discussed without our country, it ends tragically. This is what happened in 2014 and 2015. It all started with the 70th anniversary of the Allied landings in Normandy. Then, without the objection of the Polish president at the time, Bronisław Komorowski, Putin allegedly agreed to the Normandy format by blocking Poland's participation. It was this meeting that led to the so-called Minsk agreements, in which Poland was not present. This did not end the war in Ukraine, but gave Putin time to prepare for a full-scale war a few years later. The Minsk Agreement, I remind you, which included Ukraine in the company of precisely those countries outside our region, let's just say, was not a complete success. Radosław Sikorski now admits this. However, it was Radosław Sikorski who forced the Ukrainians protesting in the Euromaidan to sign the agreement in 2014.
You all be dead.
And it was Sikorski who, along with Tusk, pursued a reset policy with Russia that fit in with German interests with Moscow. When I criticized this policy on a regular basis right after the change of government, and Minister Sikorski tried to defend it, but he didn't say that he pursued an anti-Putin policy, that he was an enemy of Russia or blocked its expansion. He just said that this pro-Putin policy was wise, it was prudent, and it was good. Please, ladies and gentlemen, check the facts, because this is more necessary today than anything else. Otherwise, you will get fooled by this horrible propaganda. And the facts are that when the prime minister is Tusk, Poland is not at the world table, and the head of the Polish government at most does this. It seems that when talking about the fate of Europe and the world, Scholz does not need a helper.
Destabilizing Western democracies, spreading Russian propaganda, and even influencing the results of elections in European countries. These, the Freedom Today network revealed, are the main goals of Russian intelligence services in Europe. But what is most shocking in the report is the involvement of high-ranking officers, officials and intelligence agents of NATO countries. In addition to the FSB, the GRU, or Russia Today, the network of Russian agents includes individuals and organizations operating in Norway, Spain and Germany.
The report, published by the Freedom Today network, looks at Russian influence in Norway, France, Italy, Germany, the Czech Republic, Spain, Greece, and Bulgaria. This report is devastating for certain counterintelligence activities carried out by individual countries. Simply put, the Russians have consistently used deep infiltration of Western intelligence services for many years, using, among other things, massive corruption. The report reveals the links of European NATO officers to the Kremlin and their involvement in Moscow-backed operations in Europe. Their aim was to destabilize Western democracies. The Russians know one thing, that in order to dismantle NATO, you first have to dismantle the European Union. Dismantling the European Union will later make it possible to take action against NATO, because the NATO alliance is a political alliance of countries that are also members of the European Union. On one side, the network of Russian influence in Europe is formed by senior NATO officers, or NGOs, operating on the old continent. On the other, Russian agencies, GRU or FSB, as well as Russian state media, such as Russia Today. Their job was to spy, wage cyber warfare, disseminate Russian propaganda, and even influence the outcome of elections in Europe. This infiltration was very deep, very wide, and all kinds of documents, serious analytical and counterintelligence documents, show this. The report also shows how Russia effectively manipulates public opinion and implements its own policies in European countries, using secret agents and seemingly legitimate organizations. Russia believes that a divided Europe will behave as Russia wants it to behave, i.e., Russia will get along in one way or another with the biggest countries, like Germany, maybe some others, and the rest will be background noise, with which Russia can do whatever it wants. There is not a word about Poland in the report. This does not, however, mean that Poland is free of Russian influence. This influence was revealed by the Commission of Inquiry into Russian Influence in Poland. There are similarities between the two reports, which point to widespread actions by the Kremlin to destabilize the West, including Poland. A report by Freedom Today Net shows links between senior NATO officials and Russian intelligence services, such as the GRU and FSB, which are responsible for espionage and cyber attacks. The Commission of Inquiry into Russian Influence in Poland revealed links to the Russian Military Counterintelligence Service. The approval for the cooperation of the Military Counterintelligence Service with the FSB was given by none other than Donald Tusk. An extract from the report of the Commission of Inquiry into Russian Influence in Poland. The Military Counterintelligence Service, as an institution whose basic tasks include the protection of the Polish armed forces against threats from foreign special services, succumbed to the influence of the Russian Federation. By agreeing to cooperate with the FSB in December 2011 without consulting the defense minister, as required by law, Prime Minister Donald Tusk failed to exercise due diligence in supervising the activities of the Military Counterintelligence Service. Details about these connections are also described in the book by the authors of the documentary series Reset, historian Sławomir Cęckiewicz and the program director of Republika, Michał Rachoń, titled Zgoda.
$500 million in gold and cash is said to be held in the basement of the Sahel hospital in central Beirut. According to Israeli intelligence, it is a Hezbollah asset used to finance the war. Tel Aviv has warned that the complex is under surveillance, but has declared that it will not bomb the hospital. Hospital authorities maintain, however, that there is no gold in the vaults and that Israel is trying to put pressure on the entire healthcare system in the Lebanese capital. This is a visualization of the Al Sahel hospital in Beirut, prepared based on Mossad intelligence. According to Israel, it is in the basement beneath the building that Hezbollah's main treasury is supposed to be located, with gold bars and bags of money inside. A total of $500 million to finance a war against Israel.
The Israeli Air Force is monitoring the compound, as you can see. However, we will not strike the hospital itself.
Hospital authorities held a meeting with journalists almost immediately after the Israeli information became public and showed the basement of the facility. They claim that there is nothing in the basement and that the hospital itself has no ties to Hezbollah. We consider what the Zionist enemy said to be 100% wrong. There is nothing true about it. This hospital was built in the 1980s, so it is impossible for there to be any truth in these accusations at all. Everyone in Lebanon knows that this hospital is not affiliated with any party or any other group. It is a private hospital under the Ministry of Health. The problem is that Tel Aviv does not believe these declarations. The scope of Hezbollah and its influence in Lebanon and the Lebanese government itself is so great that the subordination of the unit to the health ministry is irrelevant. The Gaza experience also makes it clear that militants often use civilian infrastructure to hide command centers and weapons storage facilities.
Hezbollah's financial network is based on two main sources of income: money from the Iranian regime and money from the Lebanese people. Iran's Quds forces transfer money to Hezbollah from Iranian oil sold in Syria. Iran also sends suitcases of cash and gold by planes to the Iranian embassy in Beirut, and then directly it goes to Hezbollah.
In recent years, more and more money has not entered circulation at all and travels between virtual wallets. Hamas and Hezbollah, but also the Houthi militias in Yemen, operate with cryptocurrencies. These are used to purchase weapons on the black market. Not only are these weapons sponsored by Iran, coming from warehouses or factories in Iran, but there is also equipment whose origins point to the United States or Western Europe. So here too, we see that somewhere this black market is supplying these weapons. And if we're talking about the black market, there must be big money behind it. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has flown to Israel. This is his 11th visit to the Middle East since the outbreak of the Gaza war. It is also likely to be his last mission under the Joe Biden administration. Washington is trying to force an Israeli ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. The White House is looking to lay the groundwork for any foreign policy success just before the November presidential elections. Unofficially, Israel's Prime Minister rejected the Democrats' suggestions at the same time, consulting directly with Donald Trump. 5 people were killed in a shooting at a house near Seattle in the United States state of Washington. A 15-year-old boy, the perpetrator of the tragedy, has been arrested. The King County Sheriff's Office said in a statement that 3 children and 2 adults were killed. A girl who lived in the house was also injured.
They discovered sort of a chaotic scene, but what they did when they entered the property is they immediately took one young male, teenage male. I don't know if the term mass shooting is appropriate, but it's a tragic domestic violence situation.
You know, the parents probably thought they were doing the right thing by homeschooling their children, protecting them from these sort of bad things that happen to the world, and here it happens right from within.
The shooting occurred early this morning at a home in Falls City, about 16 miles east of Seattle. A neighbor, who had some medical training, attempted to administer first aid before the medical services arrived. The boy was detained at the scene and placed in King County Juvenile Correctional Center. Sean Diddy Coombs may face new charges. A court in New York has received 7 new sexual abuse lawsuits, including one involving a 13-year-old girl. In recent weeks, more chilling stories about the music mogul's dark nature have surfaced.
As many of you know, our law firm has been at the forefront of some of the most important litigation in the United States. We like the tough cases. We thrive in the complicated cases. We've handled over the last 25 years some very big and very important cases. I believe that this one may surpass them all.
Coombs is already subject to 20 trials in which he is accused of sexual harassment. The rapper denies any wrongdoing. The new lawsuits deepen the legal problems for Coombs, who, according to prosecutors, forced victims to participate in sexual acts against their will, bribing and intimidating them, and hiring additional personnel to hide and cover up the acts. The Houston-based Busby law firm said it is representing more than 150 accusers. The musician is in custody awaiting a criminal trial on the 5th of May on 3 other criminal charges: racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation for prostitution. On the 10th of October, a judge rejected a defense request for free preventative measures with bail set at $50 million. That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from me, have a good night and a better tomorrow.